Welcome to today's webcast. This call is being recorded. And now to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Chris Flack.
Hey, Shannon, thank you so much, and welcome everybody in our audience to today's webcast, Why Every CSIO Needs to Know About Office 365 Security, sponsored by Avanan. I'm Chris Flack with Redmond Magazine, and I'm here to be your host for today's event, so thank you all for joining us for today's program. We appreciate it. Now, just a few quick reminders before we begin today's presentation and introduce our speakers and have all sorts of fun. Just a few quick reminders. So first things first is we are recording today's event for future viewing and listening purposes. We'll send you a link to the email you're registered with within 24 to 48 hours after today's presentation. Please feel free to share that link with coworkers, colleagues, friends, anybody who may be interested on today's topic. We would appreciate that. Also, today's webcast will feature a Q&A session at the end of it. We do encourage you, however, at any point if you have a question for our presenter to please enter your question via the Ask a Question box appearing on the left-hand side of your console. And hopefully, if time permits, we'll get to everybody's questions and get out some answers. Now, joining us for today's webcast, we have a really great presenter. His name is Michael Landaway. He is the co-founder of Avanan and has 15 years of experience in the field with startup experience as an early employee of 3 high-growth technology companies. He's taken leadership roles in engineering, sales, marketing, and business development. And he holds an MBA from New York University. He's also a really great presenter, worked with Michael a couple of times in the past, and I'm sure you're going to learn a wealth of information today about some really cool stuff that Avanan has to offer. So without any further ado, I will let Michael take the floor and get started. So why don't you take the floor, good sir?
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to look exclusively at Office 365 and what you need to know about securing Office 365. And we're going to start at a high level, at a CISO level, about what makes Office 365 secure and those things that you might be concerned about from an executive position. We will drill down a little bit into the technology, but I'm hoping to keep it at a level that we can all agree is important to us all. So just to introduce myself and the company just a little bit, my name is Michael Landaway. I'm a co-founder of a company called Avanan. We are a cloud security platform, and we offer for any cloud, any security. We'll go a little bit more into that later, but right now that's all you need to know. So let's talk about Office 365. This has been the year of Office 365. Now, of course, Microsoft has been offering it for a long time, but we have seen a tremendous growth, whereas Office 365 has passed all the big names from the Googles, the Dropboxes, Salesforce, and so on. So if you are not looking at Office 365 in the cloud, you most likely will be. In fact, in our survey before, we found that this, of course, is a very Microsoft-focused group, but many of you are very, very excited about having Office 365, and there are those that are still looking and a little bit hesitant. I'm hoping to make you feel, both of you feel safe. So when we look at just the cloud in general and what people are doing in the cloud, we can see that Office 365 is kind of the growth in Office 365 is kind of the result of, or maybe even the cause of, the tremendous growth in mail and core apps. That would be the Office suite, as well as cloud-based email. And that includes all of those different products that Microsoft has wrapped in, from the Outlook to SharePoint and so on, as well as the document storage apps. And there we probably all remember Dropbox. It's still high growth, but Box has strengthened, and now Office 365 is becoming a very strong contender for document storage. So let's talk about security in the cloud in general before we talk about Office 365. And this is what's called the shared responsibility model. Now, Amazon has described it in such a way that the cloud provider is responsible for the security of the cloud, whereas you, the customer, are responsible for your data in the cloud. Now, depending upon what kind of cloud service you are purchasing, you're responsible for all the higher layers. So if you're buying infrastructure as a service from Azure or Amazon, obviously Amazon, Azure, they're responsible for the physical portion of it, the servers, the storage, and so on. And you're building a stack above that. It's almost as if it's your own data center and they've taken the responsibility for redundancy and failover and so on. But as we move over to SaaS, and this is where Office 365 comes in, they're taking a lot of that responsibility, not only for performance, for uptime, for backup, failover, and so on, but they're also taking care of security at those lower layers. So this is why it's so cost effective, because securing the physical network and the storage and building out multiple data centers that can respond in real time, that's something that is very, very hard to do and only really cost effective at scale, which is why we have a Google and why we have a Microsoft and an Amazon. However, yes, there's tremendous cost savings, there's tremendous security savings, but it doesn't resolve all of the security concerns. And in SaaS, you're concerned about what you own, and that is your data and your people. In fact, if we drill down into those upper layers, they include a lot of things that you're used to seeing, and that is anomaly detection, phishing, credential loss, malware, data leakage, managing permissions, encryption, file, and also when it comes to auditing and compliance reporting. Those are things that, one, Microsoft is not responsible for, but more importantly, they just can't be expected to. They don't know your industry when it comes to compliance reporting. They can't be responsible for your users giving away their credentials or uploading the wrong file. In fact, if you look at, just skip the slide here. If you look at Office's terms of service, it draws that line very clearly. Now, there's nothing unique about Office 365 when it comes to drawing that line. Every other provider has pretty much exactly the same line there, in that Microsoft is not responsible for any incident resulting from your failure to follow appropriate security practices, and they're pointing at those higher layers. They're not responsible for compliance with any laws or regulations. They can't look at your data and know that it's HIPAA or not HIPAA, for example. They are committed, and I think this is key, is that among all the SaaS providers, Microsoft has been very, very aggressive about helping to protect the security of the customer's information. But if you read the SLA, they will do the best they can to protect those higher layers, but they offer no guarantees, and that's the very clear line in the SLA. So what is Microsoft doing at those higher layers? Now, this is above and beyond what most SaaS providers are offering, which is why a lot of people have felt safe moving into Office 365. I think years ago, looking at the existing offerings, there were a lot of holes there that Microsoft has worked very hard to fill. One is two-factor authentication. If you're not using it, you should, and later on maybe we'll give you an example why. Google has been doing this. Microsoft is doing this. And a lot of mail providers are starting to do this, and that is to start analyzing your email. Analyzing your email for phishing attacks, like, for example, their Safe Links program. And then, above and beyond, Microsoft is starting to offer their advanced threat protection. And this is where they, by contract, will start taking on a little of that extra responsibility. They're also providing some basic pattern matching with an email to check for people sending out Social Security numbers and credit card alerts. But let's take a look at Microsoft's offering. And that is, no matter which enterprise version of Office 365 you're using, the more you pay, the more services you get. But it's also true the more security you get. And this is where their advanced threat protection comes in. So if you buy the basic account, then you don't have those additional layers. You are under the original SLA. Now, with advanced threat protection, if you get the Enterprise E5, it's included, but for other accounts, it's $2 it's $2 per user per month, so it's $24 per year. Sorry about the typo. In the end, they are, again, kind of, they're not making any guarantees, but they are offering additional value for security. So before we started, we put out a survey over the last few days to some of you, and usually I use these surveys to try to figure out where we want to go when it comes to discussing security. And fortunately or unfortunately, you guys were pretty much across the board when it came to what's important to you. Phishing and ransomware, I think you went back and forth between those, so those almost took the lead. Credential loss, malware, data leakage, compliance, these are all concerns that you have or should have when it comes to security in the cloud. So what I'm going to try to do is actually address all of these things. So we're going to have a pretty action-packed presentation today. And the way I'm going to do that is talk about different portions of Office 365 and try to include each of these security concerns within those sections. So for example, I'm going to take a look at email within Office 365 and talk about phishing, ransomware, credential loss, and malware. And email is actually where Microsoft has been very aggressive about solving security problems. And so I'll actually look at the advanced threat protection and see where it fills some gaps and where there might be some security issues. Then we'll talk about file sharing. There's an overlap there because file sharing can be a source of malware spread, but more importantly, data leakage. And that leads us to compliance, which overlaps data leakage for a lot of reasons, but more importantly, needs to include all those previous. So first, let's talk about email. And the reason why we're talking about email, and we'll always talk about email, at least for the near future, is the fact that email is the #1 target for hackers. Now, there is a reason for that, and that goes back to the shared responsibility model. But more importantly, in that at scale, we're finding better and tighter, more aggressive security at the lower layers. We're doing a much better job of patching our servers. Our networks are much tighter. We're doing hardware level encryption and so on. And so really what's happening is that the bad guys are starting to move up the stack. And the reason they're going after your users is because they are now the easy target. The network and the servers are now the hard target, and they follow the money. So we've seen just in the last few years a tremendous growth. Physical attacks, environmental attacks, and other low-level attacks are flat on the decline. So let's talk about these email attacks. And there are essentially a couple of different kinds. One is phishing, and the other, now and this year especially, ransomware. And as we look at trends, ransomware is something that's been around since 2005, but there is no year like 2016 when it comes to ransomware. And that is because we're seeing new families. In fact, it's now become a business in that each family can be multiplied over and over again into different versions. So one family might lead to literally hundreds of thousands of different versions. And now we so far have over 79, 80 different versions just this year alone. And the reason why is because we now are in the world of malware factories. And what that means is that I, as a bad guy, will take a piece of malware, one of these ransomware tools, and I will create multiple variants of it. And so I might send out 1 million different variants, which means that each has a different hash, each would have a different signature. And so the signature-based systems just can't keep up. Hashes this year lasted no more than a minute. We might see a file and then never see that file again for the rest of the year. Why? Because it was only used once. And this is what we covered earlier this year, and that is because the hackers are starting to see the cloud as kind of an extension of the OS. And what I'm describing here is actually true of a lot of the cloud-based security systems. So there's nothing particular here about Office 365. In fact, I think Office 365 is kind of the victim of its own success. In the same way that most malware attacks Windows machines versus Mac or Linux, has nothing to do with the level of security and more to do with the fact that that's where the money is. And that's where most of the users are. And as Office 365 has accelerated, the attacks on Office 365 has accelerated as well. And in the same way that malware writers will test their malware against different versions of operating system, different versions of malware protection, what we found earlier this year is that they are now starting to test against Office 365. They open up their own accounts. They might even buy advanced threat protection and test their malware against it so that they know in advance that this is malware that will make it through. So when they do send it to the user's desktop, they know that there really is no barrier between them and the user. So they essentially have 100% access to the inbox. This is why Microsoft has done such an aggressive job of adding different layers of security. They have been very responsive when it comes to addressing these problems, which is why we are seeing a reduction in Office 365 malware. However, the threat will always be there in the same way the threat will always be there on the desktop. So this is kind of a diagram of that, in that what's happening is that the desktop is the last and now only line of defense. The user may or may not click on it. The user is probably not the best line of defense, no matter how well educated they are. So we are now relying on the desktop to prevent these malware attacks because the barriers aren't there, which is why Microsoft has done such an aggressive job in Windows 10. In fact, just announced a new version this week that has done such a much better job when it comes to defending against ransomware. But let's talk about the security stack. And let's pause for a moment and forget the cloud, forget your data, no matter where it is. Let's look at your data center and look at the problem from a security perspective, maybe 5 years ago or even today, and that is when you are protecting your data in the data center, you have a security stack for each of those different layers. So it could be malware protection, data classification, data leakage. It could be encryption. Maybe you're encrypting on the desktop, encrypting in the data center, encrypting as it goes out to mobile devices. And of course, and this is true of anyone in the industry, you are auditing everything you do, every file, every user, every event. And so this is your data center security stack. In fact, we can drill down even more and find that if we look at malware, there are new layers of security that are being introduced just in the last couple of years. So the statement that antivirus is dead is true only in the fact that they are being very, very aggressive. It's a great first-line defense. What we found is that sandboxing is kind of the minimum requirement anymore for stopping the latest threats. That at some point, an attack will be unknown, and that unknown period could be a day or months. This is where sandboxing comes in. And to defend your data in the cloud or your data in the data center, sandboxing is a minimum requirement. So I'm hoping that everyone has their own brand. What we're seeing now in the last year or two is now using machine learning and predictive AI to identify malware, and for a couple of reasons. One, the attackers are testing against sandboxing tools. They have ways of knowing if the malware is running on a sandboxing tool, so it won't ignite. So what we're finding is that for malware, we need those multiple layers. The first layer of antivirus takes out most of the noise. Sandboxing is a test that catches most of the 0 days. But the predictive AI adds another hurdle. And if you think about malware writing as a business, getting by each one of these layers is an expense, and a very, very challenging one at that. So no security tool is 100%, but if you use different technologies at each layer, and those malware writers have to write to get through each layer, then it increases their cost. So someone with 3 layers of defense is more expensive to attack and maybe impossible to attack versus someone with just 1. So let's talk about those layers of defense in the cloud. And this is where we'll do a short little outlining about what we do, and then we'll talk about email and then file security. And that is, what Avanan has done is taken all those security tools that you might use in the data center and created cloud-based versions of them from over 60 different vendors. So the idea is that we build the stack for you. We identified those tools that are the most advanced, that are stopping today's threats. So it is what you would normally do in your data center, choosing the best, picking the tires, finding out what works. But we do that job for you in the cloud. And we fundamentally believe that no one company can be the best at everything. And because of that, we seek the best in the world when it comes to security. In fact, there's no other place except if you have very expensive security stack in your data center that you would be able to spin up all of these different technologies, because we're always seeking out the most advanced. And by playing that role for you, we can, first of all, increase your security, but more importantly, let you sleep at night when it comes to knowing that there is no advanced security tool out there that we haven't looked at and considered introducing to the stack. In fact, this is a great diagram of our partners. Without naming names, you can see that the partners that we have are some of the best when it comes to each one of those layers. So you know that for DLP, either we can offer you the DLP you're already using, so configuration is 0 cost and 0 time, or you know that it's best of breed when it comes to what's stopping the bad guys now. So what we do is we connect that stack we built to your Office 365 account using a secure API. That gives us a couple of things that are very important when it comes to what we'll talk about a little bit later, and that is that 100% visibility, in that not only do we see everything that's going on right now, every user login, every event, every file that's being uploaded right now, but also go back in history, in that we can see all files that are there now, and we can see all files and events and user changes that have gone since the beginning of your account. And that gives us a history, a context, and the ability to make security decisions within the realm of your universe, personal decision. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then when we decide to make a decision, we will have cloud-native enforcement. So instead of just allowing or denying, we can automatically change permissions or move things around so that you're not needing to micromanage when it comes to policy control. That can all be automated, and automated in a way that's meaningful in the cloud. And because we do this for Office 365 and then also for other SaaS, it makes it possible to not only set policy across all of your SaaS accounts, but you can make it unified so that you can set a policy once and it applies everywhere. And then with comprehensive monitoring, if we find somebody that is logging into Google from one place and logging into Office from someplace else, that's an anomaly. And if someone is trying out some stolen credentials across different accounts, we can see that long before it hits your real accounts. Because of that API, there's no proxy, no point of failure. Your users connect directly. And I think more importantly, we offer that security without your users needing to make any changes in their behavior. So what I would like to do is give you kind of a short demo, basically to dig down into some of the things that are concerned when it comes to protection. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on screen share here. And essentially, what we're going to do is look at 2 Office 365 email accounts. And that is one of them that is using advanced threat protection, And the other one is using advanced threat protection, but it's also protected by the security stack. And so setting up the live, and then so this is the unprotected account. It does have advanced threat protection, but we call it versus the protected account, which is actually connected via the Avanan stack. So what I'm going to do is kind of a very simple test, and that is I'm going to send an email to both. I'm going to send a piece of malware to both. I'm going to use Google here. Nothing special about that, except that it's kind of a neutral party. And what I'm going to do is create a new message, and I'm going to send the first message to the protected account. So advanced threat protection only, and then the other one that is protected by Avanan. So I'm going to send malware to both. And I'm going to show you something a little bit interesting, a little text here. I'm going to actually drag a couple of files there. And you'll notice that Google detected immediately that the first one was malware. And this is just known malware. It's doing a hash check. And the other one is actually one that I created just a few minutes ago using exactly the same technique that the malware writers do. And there are a couple of tools out there. One of my favorites is called checkyourstep.com. And essentially what it does is create a piece of benign malware and rehashes it. So when I generate a test file and download it, it actually creates a new version of that same piece of malware. Create it again, send it again. And the thing about this malware is the fact that it's benign. It opens up a web page in the background in a way that is exactly the same way that the ransomware tools use to download its ransomware encryptor, but does it in a way that's very visible and obvious to you. But I think the important thing is that this little tool can create newer versions pretty much nonstop, millions at a time. So Google detected the first one, so I'm not going to try to send that one. In fact, it won't let me. But I want to go ahead and send this one. And now it's heading off to both of these systems. Now, there are a couple of differences here. One is, well, this one made it through. So this, now, this is not surprising because actually the tool that we use is designed exactly for that reason, designed to get through Office 365. So again, it's designed to do that. Now, on the Avanan side, it's quarantined. And the way that's done is that it replaces that email so that it tells me that it was found to be suspicious, it might be infected, and then if I want to release it from quarantine, I can click here, which essentially is a request to the administrator to recover it. What's nice is that the administrator can do a little deeper digging to find out why it was flagged. Most of the time, they're really not concerned, but if they want to dig deeper, this is where we look at our platform. So what I'm going to do is go to the dashboard, and it timed out since I logged in. There we go. And we can take a look at one of the alerts, why it was flagged. So if I drill down to that, let me give you an overview. This is our dashboard. It's connected to this Office 365 account. It's also connected to a Google account. This is the OneDrive account, the Office 365 email account, Gmail. It's doing some shadow IT detection and so on. But for now, we're really concerned about drilling down into this file that was detected. And this is where the strength of the full stack security comes in. And that is, in this case, we just had 3 different security tools. And our partners hate when we show this, but this is very, very typical in that 3 different security tools analyzed this file, did it in parallel. This is the benefit of the cloud. And you notice the very short delay, but the signature-based system missed it. It actually saw it as being an OK file. Not surprising, it was designed for that purpose. Now, predictive malware is kind of the new technology that Cylance and Solbit are offering, this artificial intelligence tool, and it identified it as a threat. And then when we look at the sandboxing, and this is something you're probably already familiar with, is the sandboxing tool actually tested it within an environment. It tried to connect to the internet using Internet Explorer and download a file, and so that's what it discovered. And so what we can see is kind of the history of this file, who sent it, who received it, everything that an administrator would need to know to decide whether this is a file that you'd want to release. In fact, we even have even more information when it comes to what the administrator wants to see. And this is the benefit of actually testing the file, and that is we can actually see the activity. So there's a lot of information here, but I think the key thing is that our system is designed so that you never have to see this. Our system is designed so that we build a stack for you, it detects the problem, eliminates the problem, and frankly speaking, you don't want to see this. It's designed to be as invisible as Microsoft security. So that was the email detection. What's nice is that we also offer malware scanning, phishing scanning, URL filtering, algorithms for identifying malicious emails that may not have a link or a file, like the CEO threats and so on. And these are layers of security that, one, we can't expect Microsoft to offer, because, like I said, no one company can be best at everything. And then a year from now, what will be the tool that blocks the next threat? That's our job to find out, our job to add to your security stack. So that is email security when it comes to malware, ransomware, and phishing. And what I'd like to do now is talk about file sharing and some of the risks involved there. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel the screen share, go back to the slide deck, and we will share a little bit more. Okay, and so now that that's updated, let's look at OneDrive. So security in the cloud has been focused on email for all the right reasons, which is why every major company is offering layers of security above email. But when it comes to OneDrive, or even Box, or Google Drive, or ShareFile, and so on, these are there are security concerns that are unique to cloud-based file sharing versus file sharing within your data center. And the real concern is the fact that your users can both be the target as well as the source of the threat. So again, we did a survey and found that obviously, because this is a Redmond magazine, most of you are using Office 365. However, we actually assume that because so many are using Office 365 email, but using Box for file sharing, that there is a group of you that we actually didn't ask specifically about, but are reviewing Office 365, reviewing OneDrive when it comes to file sharing. No surprise, Google is very, very low on the list. In fact, it would have turned under other, but it's one of the bigger players. And some of our partners here, ShareFile and Ignite, these are all the alternatives that offer file sharing and offer layers of security beyond what Box and Office 365 do. In fact, they have SLAs that do go farther up the stack. So those are the alternatives that some of you have looked at. So let's look at that security stack again and where OneDrive comes in. Now, for all the right reasons, Microsoft has been focusing on email, and they are building a roadmap that will start offering some of these security tools down for their OneDrive or their file sharing. But until then, they don't offer the same stack they do for email for their OneDrive. So, and these are the things that are important to you when it comes to those other concerns, and that is malware or data leakage, permission control, encryption, compliance reporting. And so while all these things are available for email, I think for file sharing it becomes a much more important concern. And there are two reasons why. One is that there are sharing risks that just aren't true in your data center. And that is when it comes to the sharing risks. If a user has a file in your data center, he has fewer options of what to do with it when it comes to setting permissions. So by either clicking on a file and checking particular boxes, or moving it into the inappropriate folder, any of these things could happen. One, they could sync it with their desktop or their phone or so on, and actually that works in both directions, as in they could receive a file on their phone that's perfectly benign on their phone, and obviously the phone wouldn't have the malware scanning tools to see if there's a concern there, or DLP tools. So they might sync it from their phone and then go farther. They could share with the wrong people within their organization, and so the typical example is they just accidentally drop it into a folder one or two higher above the actual project they're working on, in which case it becomes available beyond those people in that project. It goes within their subgroup or their department. And because that's so easy to do, no amount of employee training can make your employees less human, less prone to mistakes. And so, and then of course the worst of all, and this is the greatest concern, is that they expose it to the internet, not only to make it publicly available, but also publicly searchable. And again, this reverse is true when it comes to malware risks. And I think attackers are very aware that if your ultimate goal is to get to the company, the attack surface is much larger when it comes to the fact that there are so many pathways. And so because the attack surface of each individual device that might be synced for each individual person is so large, we believe that the best place to start building a stack of defense is actually in the center, and that's in the cloud. And so this is where compliance becomes important. And I want to kind of clarify a few things when it comes to compliance and data controls, because this is where all of those permissions and file controls become so important. So just, the examples, depending on the industry you're in, you might be subject to SOX or FERPA, HIPAA, and so on. And all of these have in common the need for data classification, permission control, encryption, and of course the ability to prove that you're compliant, and that's some way to monitor and report. And so what I want to make clear is Microsoft's compliance or Microsoft's responsibility when it comes to compliance. And this is true across all SaaS vendors, and this is why the shared responsibility model is so important, because it's very, very real when it comes to your responsibilities versus theirs when it comes to compliance. And a good example is HIPAA. And so Microsoft is actually one of the very few vendors out there that are HIPAA compliant. And what that means is that they will sign a business associates agreement with you for the layers they're responsible for. And so that makes those layers HIPAA compliant. But if you ask Microsoft, if you look in their compliance section, when asked the question, does having a BAA from Microsoft ensure my organization complies with HIPAA? No, in no uncertain terms. By offering HIPAA compliance, that is kind of the minimum requirement to be HIPAA compliant, but obviously not complete. So your organization, they spell this out, is responsible for ensuring that those layers above Microsoft's responsibility align with HIPAA or whatever regulatory agreement that you are subject to. So the question is how you meet those standards, and pretty much in exactly the same way you would meet those standards in your own data center. And so let's just look at a few in these standards and how those standards can apply to the cloud or not apply to the cloud. So first, let's look at HIPAA, the example I did before. And that is, according to HIPAA standards, you are responsible to secure the data, even when it's hosted at a HIPAA-compliant provider. And Microsoft's actually one of the few. So if you want to be HIPAA-compliant, you must choose first a HIPAA-compliant provider, but then you must add your layers of security above that. You must have end-to-end encryption when it comes to uploading and downloading, which is one of the reasons why we avoided the proxy idea to begin with. But you also must encrypt data when it leaves the cloud. So it might be encrypted in place, but also needs to be encrypted out of the cloud. And how do you do that in a simple way? And that's probably one of your most profound questions. Or, and this might be key to you, in that you may need to ensure that there is no HIPAA data in the cloud. So you're going to use the cloud for all the right administrative reasons, but you don't want HIPAA personal identifiable information in the cloud. So, which is why you don't need to encrypt anything. You don't need to worry about all those layers, but you are responsible to make sure that you don't have personal identifiable information in the cloud. So even though you're not securing it, even though your policy is not to have personal information in the cloud, you must test and you must monitor to ensure that you're compliant, because not knowing that it's there is no longer a defense. PCI is another good example. In fact, I can shorten the slide and just say don't do it. There's no reason for you to be storing PCI risky data almost anywhere, but especially in the cloud, because full disk encryption, every cloud provider now offers full disk encryption. Microsoft offers full disk encryption. However, it is not independent of access control. What that means is that if I have credentials to log in, I also have the key to decrypt, and it's simultaneous. You have the responsibility that downloaded data is encrypted, but also that the decryption keys are not tied to user accounts. And that's the real issue, is that at the lower layers that Microsoft is responsible for, they are encrypting the data at the drive level. But when it comes to the higher layers where you're responsible, you must have your own file level policy-based encryption in order to become PCI compliant. Again, my recommendation is just keep it out of the cloud and monitor and audit the files you have in the cloud to make sure that it doesn't include PCI data. Sarbanes-Oxley has that same stack. You must locate the data, so you should be scanning for information. You must, you must now compare the data to the user's permissions. So this is where you actually need to take file information, scan the file for information that might be sensitive, and then match that to the permissions that that individual or that folder or that user might have, and that folder actually might be available to one of your partners. So you need context, and this is where Sarbanes-Oxley can be a challenge when it comes to the cloud, because not only do you need to identify and classify the documents, but you need to make policy in context, because it may be necessary for you to share a file with not only another organization outside yours for all the right business reasons, but it may be necessary for two individuals within your organization, within the same Microsoft account, to share or not share information. And so you need to build firewalls within the cloud account, within the OneDrive account, so that two individuals can't communicate with one another, share files. So I had a problem with my Windows instance a little while ago. So my Windows instance restarted. So I'm going to go ahead and see if the demo is up and running. And if not, that's fine. We will go ahead and offer that There we go. I was going to do a little file sharing demo and show you kind of why there is a concern when it comes to data in the cloud. And more importantly, and I think you actually don't need the demo to see it, and that is that when a user is sharing, and in this case, I am on one computer, and I am using OneDrive to share with here this virtual device, and it's very easy for me to be able to drop a file into my confidential folder, or, hey guys, I want to share some Halloween pics, but I accidentally dropped this confidential file into it, or worst of all, share it with the internet. And so the threat is that it's very, very easy for a user to make a small mistake, but more importantly, it's also possible for malware to identify a shared directory and use that as a channel to spread. You don't hear of worms much anymore. That's because those lower layers have been tightened up, but also because there are now new avenues to spread, and cloud sharing is one of those. So essentially, what I can show you is the fact that we offer those same stacks of tools when it comes to identifying confidential information, as well as malware as it moves between two different systems. So even though my Windows system is about syncing, I can show you kind of what it looks like from an administrative point of view when it comes to some of these files. And that is, for example, here's someone who tried to share some SWIFT codes or some credit card numbers, or a piece of malware was detected using Sandblast. The idea is that in the same way that your data center security stack was a firewall between your data center and your users and the world, the Avanan system is essentially a firewall between every user, between every folder, and between your users and the world. And the only way to do that is within that context. So what's nice is that here as I drill down, let's take a look at one of these files. We have a lot of the tools necessary to meet your security requirements. And here's an example. Now, from a security perspective, all of these security tools said it was fine, and it is. So here we have two predictive malware systems running side by side. Both of them said it was okay. Two signature-based antivirus systems said it was okay. But Symantec said, oh, I found some SWIFT codes. Now, for compliance reasons, you're probably already using a DLP tool. Now, Microsoft offers a basic level of DLP scanning for email, and so checking for credit card numbers and social security numbers and so on. But when it comes to kind of the more advanced tools for both email and OneDrive, you probably want to use exactly the same security tools you're already using, because fine-tuning those rules on a particular set of files, a type of files, it can be a challenge, and also from a reporting perspective is very important. So the fact that you can choose exactly the same tool you're already using in the data center, but a cloud-based version of it, means that you can actually treat all of your data in the cloud as if it's just another data center. You might have a data center north, data center south, but now you have data center cloud. And so using exactly the same policy tools, you can go ahead and set policies using exactly the same tools you would in your data center. So as we get close to the end of the hour, I do want to mention a couple of things. One is reporting, and that is everything that we do, obviously collecting events from Office when it comes to every login, every user, every file, every permission, every piece of information about what's going on in the cloud, as well as what's going on in the stack security tool. So every malicious file found, every confidential file, every permission change, and so on. All that is collected and can be sent to your existing compliance system. So that gives you the ability to meet that compliance requirement in a way that already uses your existing architecture, your existing tools. So from a reporting perspective, again, it just looks like another data center. And so Another key aspect is that ability to look in history. And that is because when we connect, we see every user, every file, every event, permission change, and so on that's going on right now. We can also go back, and a good example is we found a file publicly available. It was a spreadsheet of credit card numbers. Now, that would normally be a violation. However, by going back in history, we could see who uploaded it. Okay, shame on them. But we could also see who downloaded it. And because it was available but no one downloaded it, we can identify no harm, no foul. So while it was structurally insecure, there was no security event. And so when it comes to maintaining compliance, both of those things are important. Proving that you are as secure as you can be, but also that even if there was a violation, that there was no security event. And being able to prove that is probably the most important part of that. So our goal is to allow you to meet that compliance by building the security stack with the latest technology that hits all of those checkboxes, meets all those needs. And so I think there was one last thing that I did promise, and I've got 2 more minutes to do, and that is I want to show you why it's important to never use the same password twice. Before we joined, we took a look. We do a lot of analysis of all the major security breaches out there. And so just, for example, taking a look at the recent LinkedIn breach, you will probably not be surprised at the number of unique emails that we found in a number of different domains. And so, for example, Adobe, there were 3,135 unique emails associated with that breach, in which case all of those passwords were exposed. Now, if a person uses the same password for their business account as they do for their LinkedIn account, then it's no extra effort for the bad guys to log in. So a couple of ways we address that. One is that we can look back and we're monitoring for those attacks, those failed logins or attempted attacks. But more importantly, in the same way that we're monitoring email for data leakage or malware, we're also looking for your users that have decided to use a corporate email address to sign up for an unaccepted SaaS account. So if you're using a company address to log into adult friend finders, we monitor your email to see those conversations so that you know that there is a threat there. And you know, being Dropbox and Adobe and so on, all those very, very common tools, it's just good practice. So lost credentials is one of those security challenges that is very, very difficult and requires view in all directions. And this is where having all our stack of tools and so much information is so important. Obviously, we're scanning for phishing and malware detection. We're looking for cross-cloud credential use because if you're using both Box and Office, we can correlate your users' behavior between those two. Looking for and then having that historical behavior on day one, we can look back at a user's behavior and build that profile so we can see anomalous behavior sooner rather than later. So I think that was the last thing you asked me to cover, and I think I've covered it all. We've got a couple more minutes for questions, so I apologize for taking all your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excuse me. Thank you so much, Michael, for your presentation and taking time to do those demos of yours. So thank you so much. So for those of you in the audience, a couple things really briefly. So we've only got a couple of minutes here for a Q&A session, so I'll try to fire away as many questions as I can before the show ends. Also, too, if you are interested in having a demo for yourself of what Avanan was offering today, please feel free to comment in the Q&A section if you're interested in having a demo of the product for yourself. That would be great. So please send that information in if you'd be interested in that via the Q&A box on your screen. So we got a question here. Let's see, Michael, first question is really quickly, does your product use proxies or reroute mail traffic?
No, not at all. And that's key, is that we are completely out of band. And because I'll move on to the next question.
Does your product take long to set up?
About 10 minutes, because all we need is permission to open that API connection. We usually do it in the middle of the afternoon, no effect on the users.
In terms of permissions, earlier on you said in terms of permissions, does that mean Avanan has full domain access to the accounts?
So no, we don't have access. We have access to the API that gives us access to what we need to get do all the security scans and so on and so forth. But from a security perspective, no, we don't have access to click on all your files and so on for all the right HIPAA and PCI security concerns.
Are the third-party products included with Avanan licensed, or do we need to subscribe to your service in addition to licensing all the individual products?
So we build packages depending upon kind of the types of layers of security you need, and within those packages, there'll be stack things. We take care of all that for you, and the licensing, et cetera, and so forth. Now, we know some customers have a much, they may already have site licenses, may already have licenses, in which case those packages can be a lot cheaper because you probably already paid for it. But we take care of everything most of the time.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. A couple people had asked that question. Let's see here. Just trying to fire through the questions here. Let's see here. Question really briefly. What other data other than PCI would you suggest not storing in the cloud? Financial data, something like that, et cetera?
Absolutely. And I think the key thing is that if you're subject to any government regulation, it's a good idea to sit down with the SLA of whatever cloud provider you're offering to see where they leave off and you need to pick up. And in fact, that is something that we offer free of charge, and that is we can sit down with you when it comes to your the SaaS or SaaS of choice, or even just when you're looking at it. Take a look at the regulations that you need to be concerned about, and even if you're already in the cloud, some people have been taking advantage of our free trial to scan their files, check for HIPAA, check for PCI, check for whatever security policy you need, just so that you can see the state of your network. Maybe you have no problem in the cloud and your employee policies are good enough. So yeah, if that's of interest, feel free to get in touch with us. That's part of what we do.
Excellent, excellent. Rapid fire here. I love it. Is Avanan considered a CASB?
No, Cloud Access Security Broker. That was kind of a market built around the proxy. We kind of saw that model and found that there were some limitations on offering the full stack being inline, and so we built from the ground up the API methodology.
All right, and one last question here before we close out today. This person's asking, Luke is asking, if you don't have access to the mailbox, then are you scanning the messages before they come in?
No, actually, we are scanning the files before they come and go, or before they come and go into your mailbox. And what's nice is that we are not an MTA, so we are not in the way of the mail service. Again, in that case, we're not a proxy either. So from the user's perspective, it's before it gets into the inbox. From a technology perspective, it's done kind of in parallel. We're actually manipulating the files itself so that it's not available to you until we've had a chance to scan it. It's kind of the same way we do the file sharing, and that is the file might be uploaded from somebody's desktop, but then not synced, not shareable, not movable, not visible to anyone else until we've had a chance to test it. And then, if that's the case, then if it passes all the tests, then we make it available. Or if it doesn't pass the test, we micromanage those permissions or move it so that from the user's perspective, it goes up and it's available. From our perspective, we're doing a lot of things in the background before it's made available.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for answering all those questions. If we didn't get to your question, don't worry. I will make sure that the people over here get your question out to Michael so that way he can answer them for you once the event is over today. Also, I'll make sure that I follow up with all the people from Avanan after the webcast is over today with your questions if we didn't get to them. But thank you, everybody, for attending today's webcast. Really appreciate you taking your time out to join us for today's program. If you need any of the materials or anything like that, feel free to use the resource tab, refresh your screen, see if they are in your doc now for those people that asked. If you didn't get them, don't worry, I'll send you out a copy probably within a couple hours or so by the end of the day. But thank you also for attending today's webcast sponsored by Redmond Magazine. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Michael.